So if anybody does, come in late, John, feel free to, pop them on in. But as John said, I'm John Manchester. I'm one of the park rangers at Congaree National Park. I have been there 7 years today, I think. I think it's 7 years today. Um, Today or tomorrow. And it's a really beautiful park, and it's a very similar landscape and habitat to what you can find at Congaree Creek Heritage Reserve, where the 12,000-year history park is. The difference is that we're a river floodplain, and the 12,000-year history park, well, it does have floodplain in it. It's much smaller. It's much more of a creek basin, and it's a much younger forest because it was cleared to a great extent as late as the 1800s. So a different environment, but very similar as well. And one of the big similarities is the fact that we are both pretty big bird spots. Birding is a big activity at both Congaree Creek and the 12,000-year history park and at Congaree National Park. We see a lot of birds, either who are residents or who are passing through on the spring or the fall migrations. So, that's one of our big similarities with the 12,000-year history park up there in Casey. It's a place I go birding. I go in there on a regular basis to go see what's happening in there, what birds are passing through, or what the summer or winter residents are doing. So it's a really great place to get out to and see some natural history, even though it's a 12,000-year history park. You can't take human history out of natural history, because we are all tied to that natural those natural features. So very much interconnected. But what I was invited here today to talk about was birds specifically, and because both Congaree National Park and the 12,000-year history park are really good birding spots, just wanted to offer some really good resources and just introduce people to some of the birds you might see this time of year that are passing through both Congaree National Park and the 12,000-year history park. So why birds are going to these places they are fantastic habitats. If habitat's not good, you're not going to see much there. If it's in some way just not conducive to a specific bird, you just won't see that bird there. So there's some places where you'll see very few different species. You might see your typical robins and crows and things like that, but you don't see tons of different species in certain spots. But the 12,000-year history park, Congaree National Park, they're excellent habitats. They see hundreds of species of birds that pass through, or they're there year round. So, or maybe they're just seasonal residents. So habitat's really important for a couple of reasons. It provides food. So birds that are migrating through, some of these birds are traveling thousands of miles. Some of these birds have been way up in Canada. That's where they spend their summers, and they're heading home for the winter down to places in Central and South America. They're traveling a long way. And for, some of these birds are really, really tiny. They need to recharge their batteries and have food. So habitats like what you find at these two parks provide them food. It's a good place to find rest, and it's sheltered rest. So they can still kind of hide out among the leaves that are still on the trees and avoid predators that might be looking for a quick snack. So really good habitat, a really good stopping place, a really good rest stop where food and shelter are available for them. When we talk about birds and habitat, we have a couple ways to describe birds. We have birds that are specialists and birds that are generalists. So a generalist bird species, it can hang out pretty much anywhere. So birds that you see in just a variety of different places, you could see it next to a parking lot, you could see it in your backyard, you could see it at Congaree National Park or the 12,000-year history park. those might be generalist species. So they don't need anything really specific. They can pretty much find what they need anywhere. But then you have birds that are specialists. They like or need specific things that if they don't have those, they can't hang out in that place. So a specialist species may be a bird like in the spring we see prothonotary warblers. They hang out in nests in places like Congaree Creek and Congaree National Park because they like those bottomland environments. That's where they can nest. They like to nest in cavities. They're one of the only 2 cavity nesting warblers in the United States and North America. And they find those in things like cypress knees. But you won't find those specifically in your backyard. Your backyard doesn't have their habitat. So you have different types of birds that need different types of things in order to survive. So these habitats are really important, especially for what we call neotropical migrants. These are those birds like warblers that are, passing through in the spring and in the fall, or they might be birds that do stay here over the summer, but they spend at least half the year down in Central or South America or the Caribbean. So they hang out in those warmer places in the winter months, and they'll come up here into North America for the spring and summer before heading back down south for the fall. So what we have at Congaree Creek and the 12,000 Year History Park at Congaree National Park, this time of year we'll see 3 types of birds that might be coming through. We've got our fall migrants, so they'll be coming through and only stopping, maybe a day or 2, or maybe just stopping for the day and then off they go. We'll have our seasonal residents that are coming in. So these are birds that they spent time much further north and they only come down to the south for the winter time. So they don't go as far as Central South America and the Caribbean. And then we have our year-round residents, birds that if you go there in winter, spring, summer, fall, you'll see those birds pretty much year-round. And so I want to introduce you to some of those birds. I can't introduce you to all of them because there are a lot. They've seen over 167 species of birds in the area around the 12,000 Year History Park. We've seen 200 species plus in Congaree. So if I were to share every species of bird we've seen, we'd be here for a while. But I just wanted to share some of those birds with you. So I'm actually going to share my screen here real quick so you can see some of those birds. The first ones I wanted to share with you are our fall migrants, birds that you would see passing through, but they don't spend a lot of time in the park, in the fall or in the spring, because they will pass through in the spring too. So we've got birds like the yellow warbler, very beautiful yellow bird. You can see why it's called a yellow warbler because it is almost entirely yellow, and it's got some really distinct kind of reddish stripes on its belly and chest in the spring and summer, and it stays fairly like that through the winter. It doesn't really change a ton as you head into the winter months. So they don't stick around very long. But if you see one, you know one because it's the only warbler that we have that is almost entirely yellow, almost all the way across its body. Then we might have birds like the chestnut-sided warbler. These are birds that spend most of their spring and summer up in areas in New England. So you can see where they breed up here, New York up into Canada, and they'll pass through our area in the fall and the spring when they're migrating, and they'll spend the winter down here in Central and South America and the Caribbean. So they're also very kind of distinctive bird with that really yellow cap and black mask. You've got that chestnut side right there that is really distinctive.
You want me to turn it up for you?
So you've got this bird right here that will possibly show up in the 12,000 History Park and at Congaree. Another one that we might see passing through in the fall is the black Bernese warbler. I actually was looking at the list for what has been seen around the 12,000 History Park, and someone did spot one of these this fall. So in the spring, they have this really bright flame red. The males have this bright flame red color up around their face. In the fall, they're going to start losing that really pretty coloration, because this is all about attracting a female for breeding in the spring and summertime. So in the winter, they don't need to have that really bright coloration. So they'll actually kind of become a little duller in the fall as they're going through. But if you learn what the different marks are on a bird, you'll be able to really kind of figure out if you're seeing a black Bernese or not. You can definitely see they still have that mask, and in both the male and the females in the fall. And then this is a bird. It's called a veery. It's a type of thrush. So it's related to the robin and the American robin and the bluebird that you see here pretty much year round. So very, very pretty bird, even though it looks kind of, drab. They have a beautiful song. And these birds are nighttime migrants. They travel by night, and they'll kind of hang out in the brush and low to the ground during the daytime. And then a cousin to them is the Swainson's thrush. So you can tell they look similar, but they've got a little more spotting along their chest and their belly, and they also will travel a lot at night. You might see one for one day or a couple days. They'll come down and they'll feed on things like holly berries, pokeberries, things like that they can find, and they'll continue on their way overnight. And then if you look up high during the fall, you may see things like the broad-winged hawk. They are down here, through the summertime. So they're not necessarily, strictly fall migrants. But during the fall, a lot of hawks will migrate through our area. They'll travel more down the mountain range to our west. So if you go to someplace like Caesar's Head or Table Rock, you might get a really, really cool parade of hawks and other raptors that are flying over. But you may see one of these as well during the fall migration. They look, if you're not really looking close, they may look similar to your red shoulder or your red tail hawk. But they just got this one really bold black and white stripe right back here that stands out. And if you look along the edge of their wings, they've got that black ring around it that really kind of stands out. So that is one way to tell if you're seeing a broad-winged hawk or maybe one of our just regular year-round hawks that we have here. And then you may also start seeing our winter birds, birds that are coming through for for the winter. They're gonna hang out here through the winter months. One that I really love to see is the cedar waxwing. Looks kind of like a cardinal, but they hang out in groups. They are flock birds. They will hang out in holly trees and other trees that have berries on them. They get their name waxwing because it looks like I'll bring the picture up here. It looks like the tip of their wing is getting dipped in a little bit of like red candle wax. So they're very very social birds. And if you see like a big flock of birds flying around a holly tree during the late fall or the winter time, it's a good chance it might be a flock of cedar waxwings. Another winter resident is our hermit thrush. So another cousin of the robin and the two thrushes we saw that are fall migrants. This one will stick around for the winter. They are kind of distinct because they keep their tail kind of poked up, and they've got that really red rufous tail, and they kind of make a tuck 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 sound as they just kind of sit up there in the low branches of the trees. So they are a very common winter thrush that we have here. We've got the white-throated sparrow. These are really fun birds to look for because they jink around down in the brush, and they have a really beautiful song. When we talk about bird songs and we try to think about how to remember them, we think of them as singing "Oh Sam Peabody, Peabody, Peabody," or maybe "Oh Sweet Canada, Canada, Canada." But they are very distinct because they have what we call a yellow laurel patch right there. So, and then obviously the white that they get their name from. We have winter wrens. Cousin of the Carolina wren that we have here year round. It's the smallest of our wrens. They stay down really low. They stay down hiding under logs or maybe under boardwalks, things like that. But they are loud. They are loud birds when they start singing. We don't hear them sing as much in the winter just because they don't sing as much because they're not trying to attract a female. But they're fun to watch, and they like to play hide and seek with you. So keep an eye out for them. They're really fun to keep an eye out for. And then we've got our ruby crown kinglet. This is one of our smaller. It's related to the flycatcher, but it's not a true flycatcher. And it gets its name because of this ruby red crest that it has. You don't always see that ruby red crest. So the way to kind of tell for these birds is they're small and they don't sit still. They're like a little kid who has abundances of energy, and they'll only pop that red crest up when they're feeling a little bit threatened. They're constantly like flicking their wings everywhere. Their wings are just constantly moving, even when they're perched someplace. And their relative is the golden crown kinglet. These birds, you do see that yellow crown much more frequently. In the wintertime, it looks much more like this, and they spend a little more time higher up than the ruby crown kinglet. They're cousins, and they spend most of their time up in Canada in the spring and summertime, and then they'll spend the winter down here where we are. So they're very commonly seen in the wintertime. The blue-headed vireo, that's another common winter bird here. So it's got what we call a spectacle around its eyes. It's one way we can tell this is a blue-headed vireo because of those white spectacles. And then in the spring, we'll see a cousin of theirs that starts to come in, and that's the yellow-throated vireo. So the blue-headed vireo, very common winter resident here. Yellow-rumped warbler, or as a birder will call it, a butterbutt, because they have very distinctive yellow patch right above their tail. See if I can get to a really good picture so you can kind of see that yellow patch, and why we call it a yellow rump warbler. You can kind of make it out right here on the back of this picture right here. So they're a very common warbler that we see in the winter time here. You don't have a ton of warblers that stay here in the winter, but this is one of the few. And then our yellow-bellied sapsucker. This is one of the woodpeckers that we only really see in the wintertime. They spend most of their time up north for the spring and summer, and then they come down here for the fall. I actually saw my first yellow-bellied sapsuckers actually in my backyard. I had not seen them in my backyard, but I had two here a couple days ago, and they still kind of had that yellow belly hanging out. In the wintertime, they tend to be a little more plain white on the belly, but they'll still have a little bit of that yellow. And then we've got our our year-round residents, birds that we see all year here at Congaree or Tilden History Park. So things like the northern cardinal, very recognizable, very common bird. We see it all over the place. The pine warbler, they are a year-round bird here as well. You can see it looks a little similar to that yellow warbler that we saw, but not as much yellow. You can see on the back side here, it does have a little bit more of that whitish gray. It's a little more drab yellow. It doesn't have those red chest and belly bars. And then our pileated woodpecker or pileated woodpecker, however you want to say that, they are year-round birds. They are very loud, very vocal. You'll hear them all over the place. Kind of makes you think of Woody the Woodpecker if you remember those cartoons. Barred owl, that's a very common bird in the habitat that we have at both parks. They call out who cooks for you all. And they don't go very far from where they were born. Studies have shown they only move about six meters away from where they were born on a general average. So they are pretty prolific throughout our area and have actually been spreading their range. The Carolina wren, our state bird. So you'll see these year round, very vocal, very loud, beautiful to watch, really fun to just keep an eye on as they're just, searching for food or building a nest. And then our brown-headed nuthatch. This is my favorite birds. I love these little guys. They sound like little squeaky toys up in the pine trees that they hang out in most. They're pretty common feeder birds too. So if you got a bird feeder, they might come down if you got them in your area. So they're hard to spot sometimes. They blend in. They like to hide, but if you get an eye on one, just watch it. They're really fun to see. And then a couple different birds I want to mention because this year they are possibly going to be seen more commonly in our area than they are normally. These are what we call, or we might have what we call an eruption. That's IRRUPTION, eruption of a couple different bird species. And so one of those is the red-breasted nuthatch, so cousin of the brown-headed nuthatch. They spend most of their time up here in the north. They do come down south. We just don't see them as much. But they're forecasting that it's very possible that they maybe see more down here because their population has kind of boomed in their typical habitat up here in the northeast of the United States and Canada. And so they're going to extend their range in the wintertime to try and find food. There might not be enough for all of them that might be seen up there. And then another one that we really don't see down here that we possibly could see is the evening grosbeak. These are beautiful birds, very distinctive if they come to your feeder, especially in the wintertime. They've got that, real distinctive yellow. It looks almost, if you look at it, just quickly like a goldfinch, but it's got that really big beak. All grosbeaks have that really big beak, and they're predicting we might have an eruption of those as well. So if you have a bird feeder and you have black oil sunflower seeds there, they will go for those. So definitely put those out this year to see if you can attract some of those. And then there's the pine siskin. We do see pine siskins here in the wintertime as well. But they're also predicting that their population may boom a little bit this year, and we may see some more of them around our area this fall and winter as well. So these are just some of the birds you might see. And I know not everybody is a birder. They might not know as much about birds, but they're interested in them. They want to learn more about birds. And there are a lot of really good tools out there that you can use to learn about birds. I'll start off with this one. This is called All About Birds. This is put out by Cornell Lab of Ornithology. This is for people who are just like, just want the basics. They're not, deep into birding. They don't want like the deep scientific language that you might find in some other resources. So you can go to this website here, and you can just type in, whatever bird you want to look for, and it'll bring up the information on that bird. You can hear what they sound like. It's got some of their calls there. You can find ID info. So how can you ID this bird? What things should you be looking for? Birds that it's similar to. So this is really good for, especially for kids, students, and just beginning novice birders. So really good information. And then if you really like the more in-depth scientific information you can find, Birds of the World, also by Cornell Lab of Ornithology, is a good resource. Now, All About Birds is free. Doesn't cost you a thing. But Birds of the World is a subscription. You do have to pay a yearly subscription fee. It's not a lot. I pay for it every year because I find the information really handy. Helps me answer questions for visitors who have questions about birds. And this is, Birds of the World. So if I'm going someplace else, if I'm going to Europe for vacation, I can look up birds I see there. So a really good handy resource. That's what I've been using to show you a lot of the birds that we went through earlier. And then during migration seasons, there's a really handy website, also by Cornell. They are the leading lab of ornithology here in the United States, but it's also a partnership with other organizations as well. They have a website they call Birdcast, and it will actually show you where migration is going to be heaviest during migration seasons. So right now, as we're getting into the end of October, migration's really starting to calm down. So when you see white on a migration map, that means a lot of birds coming through. And right now we're kind of heading into that, really orange and purple, which means we're getting low. Now in our area, we still have some birds coming through. That's what they're forecasting tonight. We'll still have some migrants coming through, kind of that medium level still, but across the rest of the country, it's starting to really calm down. You can actually watch it live. They actually have a live migration map. So you can kind of see what's going on almost in real time. And they're using our weather radars. They've learned that, weather radars do pick up birds. So the Doppler radar you would see on the news, that can pick up birds too. Not everything you see on there is rain. And then if you really want to get into looking for birds and you really want to kind of start keeping track of what you're seeing, you're getting some tools for that. Everyone knows you need to get a pair of binoculars. You don't have to get an expensive pair of binoculars. So don't think you're going to have to drop, hundreds and hundreds of dollars on a pair of binoculars, because there are some expensive ones out there. Just if you're starting out, just go get a very inexpensive pair of binoculars. And if you really like birding, you can start, saving up for a more expensive pair in the future. Get things like a bird book. So there are a lot of bird books out there. This is the Sibley's bird book. This is actually an older edition. There's a newer one out now. But the Sibley's Guide to Birds, Peterson's Guide to Birds, those are out there. And you can carry a hard copy with you, but we live in the 21st century. We're in the digital age. We're doing a program on Zoom, virtual programs. So there's a lot of stuff out there for your cell phones as well. There are apps that have all the birds that you might want to just see or might be seeing on them. So there's the Sibley's Bird app. So same thing as that book, only it's on your phone. Audubon has a free one. So if you're starting out, you want to pay money for an app, Audubon's a free app. Lots of different bird apps that you can get to help you identify birds. And if you're out and you really want to keep track of what you're seeing, that's always a really handy and good thing to do, because the people at Cornell and other ornithological labs, they can't be out there all the time. So they need our help. And so birders, they will use resources like eBird. So eBird is a website that Cornell has put out that allows you to actually track what you have seen and see what other people have seen. So for example, this is the hotspots. So you can see, all the hotspots where people go birding, and check out, what people are seeing in places like, and this is Congaree National Parks. This is there. It's not loading for me right now. Oh, here's Congaree Creeks. I kept it up. Yeah. So these are the birds people have been seeing lately. So you can see the lists of all the birds people have seen, and then you can see the lists over here. And it's really good citizen science. And they also have an app that you can use that you can track your birds that you've seen on your own birding trips, and how far you go. So all kinds of really good tools that you can use to help not only you learn more, but help scientists learn more as well about the birds that we've got going on. So with that, if anybody